我的中文水平还不是很好，所以我想用英文。I want to mention first, I teach upper division Spanish and first year Chinese. I've used the integrated Chinese text for about 4 years and very much appreciate Liu Lao's help on the text and the rest of you who worked with those texts. All of us are aware that for beginning English-speaking students of Chinese, development of meaningful literacy is very, very challenging. This is perhaps mainly because, as Walker has said, for beginning students of Chinese, the writing system represents a memorization challenge unlike anything they are likely to have run into before. According to Cody, all second language learners face what can be called the beginner's paradox that connects vocabulary learning with reading. How do students learn vocabulary through extensive reading when they do not know enough words to read well? This problem cannot help but be more pronounced for Chinese than it is for languages with less challenging orthographies. Du has articulated the problem, what he calls a special kind of vicious circle, as follows. The complications of the Chinese script make vocabulary building for reading a slow and arduous process. The result is that I can't read fast because there are too many words I don't know, and it's hard to learn more words because I can't read fast enough to see them recur. A situation of reciprocal causation sets up, in which students with insufficient knowledge of characters and character combinations are unable to effectively read, which in turn keeps them from learning through reading more of the characters and character combinations they need for reading. Furthermore, they are kept from the natural review of the known items, the items they know, that only comes through extensive exposure to print. There are other consequences as well. There's no doubt that those of us who are involved in teaching Chinese have a real interest in helping students be able to deal more quickly with the memorization of the script. I have a number of quotes, but I think I'll just skip those. Some professionals have urged us as a profession to exercise greater creativity, somehow lessen the amount of time that there is between initial exposure to characters and character combinations and eventual ability to get good exposure to print. I want to say that I am aware that currently in Chinese pedagogy, the emphasis is on word or Si level memorization. But I think many of us agree that because of the morphemic transparency of Chinese characters, firmly establishing single characters in memory can also be very important. This brings me to the old strategy that I have in my title, and that is the use of mnemonics or memory aids in connection with the characters. These memory aids usually take the form of stories that relate character components to a character's meaning. Despite the fact that many students do this spontaneously when they're first exposed to the characters, many of us have a real reluctance to even consider the usefulness of mnemonic aids. Grunberg and Morris have observed in education, memory strategies are often seen as low-level, indeed bizarre activities. I have personally seen mnemonic explanations, some in connection with Chinese characters, that have seemed so silly that I have wondered if any advantage in recall could make up for having to think in the way they suggest. I know that there are some that are very, very silly. Still, the memory challenges associated with Chinese for the beginning learner are so significant that it seems to me that we can't just peremptorily throw these devices out. I have to agree with McGinnis that wild stories cannot be discounted for their possible value in helping characters stick in the minds of the non-native speaker. I know this is controversial. Now, there's a particular adaptation of this old strategy that I've been interested in for some time. It was developed by Dr. James Heisig, who works in Japan, and it was developed for memorization of Japanese kanji. I personally haven't ever used his method to memorize characters. I wish I had. I also haven't ever taught it in a class, and I don't know that I ever will, but I have great interest in this because it looks theoretically very strong. I know this is going to be controversial. Heisig's story is this. He had already earned a doctoral degree in philosophy from Cambridge University, and had moved to Japan having no previous experience with Japanese language. He got the basic idea for his approach to the characters after spending a few days looking at books on history and etymology. Before 1 month was over, he had learned the meaning and the writing of the 1,900 general use kanji. Not pronunciation, meaning and writing. And he was satisfied that he would retain what he had memorized. I now quote him. He says, "It was not long before